Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining my session. Today, I'll be talking about how to hack and secure machine learning environments and systems. So, before I start, let me introduce myself. I am Joshua Arvin Lat, and I am the Chief Technology Officer of Nuworks Interactive Labs. I am also an AWS Machine Learning Hero, and I'm the author of three books: Machine Learning with Amazon SageMaker Cookbook, Machine Learning Engineering on AWS, and Building and Automating Penetration Testing Labs in the Cloud. End of this year or maybe early next year, there will be a fourth book coming, and it's called Learning Serverless Security. So as you can see here, I was able to write two books on machine learning and then two books on security. And here in this session, we will have a mix of both, where we'll be talking about machine learning and, of course, how do we secure the machine learning systems and environments that we have prepared. That being said, let's begin. So right now, we can see that by just typing a prompt where we simply input some text, a machine learning model can now use that input to generate an output which may not necessarily be text. So in this case, we have an image. And since we type in the prompt cat flying with wings, the model produced or generated an image of a cat with wings. So even though at this point this is not possible, the machine learning model was able to generate this using the data that it has and using the data that was used to train the said model. So in the past, the applications of machine learning and AI have been more on the discriminative side. What I mean is that, for example, when you have, let's say, a set of sentences, you can use machine learning to process those sentences and output whether they're positive or negative. Right now, there's more focus on generative AI solutions, and we'll see later on that the attacks have changed as well, depending on the type of AI application that we're working with. It's very important for us to understand what AI is and what machine learning is. So while these two are more or less related, they are technically not the same. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. So here we can see that machine learning applications are AI-powered applications. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that when something is AI-powered, it's automatically machine learning-powered, because machine learning is a subset of AI and they are not equivalent. Here, we can see that with generative AI at the bottom of the screen, we're able to generate text, we're able to generate images and audio. Basically, we're using data to generate new data. And again, it's also a subset of the overall AI umbrella. And in this talk, we will focus on how to secure the different environments and systems which are machine learning powered. And we will see that some of the production systems deployed could be in the cloud. So we'll have to talk about how to secure those as well. So when dealing with machine learning applications and systems, it's important that we have an idea of what we call an inference endpoint. So here at the bottom of the screen, we can see that we have an inference endpoint. And you can just think of this inference endpoint as some sort of web server where the machine learning model or file is stored. So this machine learning model or file is loaded and is used to process the input request, and then it is used to provide an output response. So what happens there is that if you're dealing with, let's say, a large language model, then the input would be a question, and then the machine learning model would process that question or prompt and then it would provide the relevant answer. So that inference endpoint would then serve as some sort of, again, a web server which accepts an input and then provides an output. So right now, instead of building everything from scratch, some of the machine learning engineers would utilize a machine learning service which accepts several inputs. For example, the model artifacts, some custom code, maybe a Docker container image, which would serve as the environment where the scripts will be running, and of course, the configuration. This would mean that the machine learning service would abstract some aspects of the work. For example, taking care of the cloud resources, so that all you need to worry about would be the custom part, which is, of course, the machine learning model prerequisites. At the same time, when dealing with machine learning systems and environments, only a small portion or only a portion of the entire application has the machine learning model, because the rest of the system would of course be the other components which support the data engineering side, the web application components, and so on. So in this case, let's say that we have a model deployed in an inference endpoint. That inference endpoint serves as the machine learning powered component which processes the input and then provides the output by using the model deployed inside it. The rest of the application would of course be the web application components. So here we have a front-end application. It could be hosted in a static website, and then that front-end application is pointed to, let's say, an API, a serverless API gateway, which triggers a serverless function, and that serverless function is connected to a database and is also communicating with the inference endpoint. So here we can see that more or less this is like a normal web application, but the difference is that there is a machine learning model which is invoked every time that there's a request or there's a prompt or a question. So now, the goal of this talk is to allow us to explore the different attacks and also explore how to defend against these types of attacks, because more or less the architectures would be similar to this one, or if not, those would be variations of what we'll be dealing with. And one of the challenges when dealing with machine learning environments and systems is that the libraries that we use may be vulnerable to certain types of attacks, or the developers may not be aware of the different risk and issues when dealing with these libraries. So for example, there is this library, and again, this is just one example. There are various libraries which could be equally as vulnerable. And these libraries are used to load the machine learning model. So machine learning models, whether they're small or big, they contain data. And the data they contain may contain malicious instructions. So if you load these files, and if these files contain malicious data and instructions, then those instructions could run the moment that the model is loaded. So here in this case, even though that there's a warning here, developers would just focus on getting the application working, and they would just ignore the warning and get everything working because they want the application to work right away. However, the challenge there is that it may become a starting point, and it's part of that cyber attack chain which the attacker would use to compromise the system. So there are various ways that your systems could be attacked, and one of the best ways to understand how the attack works is by understanding what's immediately accessible to the hackers, what are the vulnerable components, and what's the overall architecture that is involved. And again, this is a chain. There may be multiple attacks used against your system, and after one resource gets compromised, that resource could be used to access other resources. And then after a second or third resource is accessed or compromised, that specific resource could then be used to escalate privileges further to maybe access the entire cloud account. And then once the overall root account is accessed, or once super admin privileges have been obtained, then that can be used to either delete all the data or cause further harm in the account or in the organization. So going back to our example earlier, what if the victim machine, let's say the inference endpoint, what if the inference endpoint loads a machine learning model, and that machine learning model, of course, has that malicious instructions? If the malicious instructions contain something like this, where it connects back to an attacker machine, and that attacker machine is waiting and listening and expecting for a victim machine to connect back to it, then after this connection is established, then the attacker would now be able to run any sort of commands in the victim machine as if it were his or her own machine, meaning it's game over. So it's like SSH, where you have access to another machine and then you type in the commands. And while you may need to do some additional steps like getting higher privileges or trying to look for additional files, once you get that first access, then gaining other access and escalating privileges would of course be much easier, given that there's already an opening to begin with. So in order for us to understand this, we have to understand how easy it is for these types of payloads to be generated. So here, the examples that I'll be sharing are pretty simple and simplified, as there are more advanced ways and more complex ways to do the same thing. But again, you should be afraid that the concept that I just shared is actually easy to implement. For example, let's say we have the following functions: generate random string and generate payload. If we want to generate some payload, then of course we need to understand what type of attack that we'll be doing. So in this case, we'll be doing a reverse shell, and what we just need is the IP address of the attacker machine, which the victim machine would connect back to. So in some cases, the attacker machine would connect to the victim machine. So we may have something like a bind shell, but in this case, we'll do something in reverse, where the victim machine would connect back to the attacker machine. So once that payload is ready, then that payload can now be included in a file. So let's say that we have a model.pickle file. So for the sake of simplicity, let's just use a small file and have something like a model.pickle file that is available publicly in the internet. And that pickle file is part of an example or a tutorial where a lot of users would be using, and unfortunately their local machines or maybe the production machines or systems would then be used to load this pickle file. And here you can see that it just takes a few lines of code to include that payload in that pickle file. So the generate pickle file function would create that file, and within that file there's that malicious payload already. So what happens when the pickle files get loaded? What happens there is that the instructions, as you can see here, would be loaded automatically, and then upon load, it would run the instructions. So boom. So once this runs, Then, if all the prerequisites are met, then the victim machine would connect back to the attacker machine. So, if you're asking what's the line of code needed to load that file, yes, it's pretty standard. You may use something that pickle.load, or you may use torch.load, or you may use the other load functions or methods. And you would be surprised that most of the example codes available are like this. And you might be asking, is there really a way to prevent this? Yes, there's a way. So you may be able to use something like a restricted unpickler class, and you have a load method there. And this is a much better way to load the said file. Amazing, right? So as you can see here, this is just one of the possible types of files to be generated. And you have to understand that loading files insecurely would be impactful in a negative way. And we want to prevent these things from happening. So making sure that we load these files securely is of top priority, especially if you have a system which is loading files from an unknown source, especially if it's not from the internal team. Another way to secure your systems is through network isolation. So even if one of the servers gets compromised, the attacker won't necessarily be able to jump and attack to other machines. So making sure that the different components of your architecture are secured from each other. So that would mean that, again, continuing from the previous example, if one of the servers gets compromised and a reverse shell is established, then the compromised server cannot necessarily be used to attack other servers in the same network, especially if that server is isolated from the others. So here, what happens here is that another security mechanism or technique which can be used is that what if outbound connections are disabled completely? So with network isolation in place, where your server is not allowed to download anything from the internet or connect back to the internet or any outside resources, then even if it loads the malicious file, the connection would be stopped and no connection will be established to an outside server. So that's one of the possible solutions. And the recommended solution here is to utilize multiple defenses and techniques. So earlier, what we have been discussing is one server being compromised and maybe using network isolation to manage or prevent further harm or damage to the environment. However, it's important to note that when dealing with cloud resources, it's important to note that even if the network is secure, it's still possible for IAM privilege escalation to happen. So an example of this is, let's say you have a notebook instance environment and it has some sort of IAM role which gives it the power to perform certain actions. So if there's too much privilege or power given to that IAM role, and that notebook instance or server is assigned that role, then if that notebook instance is compromised, then the attacker may be able to have additional permissions because of the role assigned to that server. So you can think of this role as some sort of security configuration, which allows that server to run scripts, let's say upload files to a storage bucket or download files from there. However, again, these roles may be used to cause harm or cause damage to the environment, especially if the roles are a bit too permissive. So always practice the principle of least privilege, not just to humans, to human users, but also to resources with these types of IAM identities. So now let's proceed to LLM security. So earlier, we've been talking about the different techniques on how to secure machine learning environments, but right now, we also need to focus a bit and understand how LLMs work and how to secure the large language models. Because right now, a lot of companies have been building generative AI chatbots. And yes, large language models play a big role in the success of those applications and systems. So one of the possible attacks on LLMs would be model denial of service. So you can think of this as something similar to the website's denial of service, where if there's too much request, then it would definitely affect and slow down other users. Given that it's generally expensive to process these types of requests, then this is something which could definitely be felt by your users, especially if somebody's trying to trigger or invoke a lot of requests for these models. So you may be able to do something like auto-scaling, although it's not recommended at the start. It's preferred to have some sort of caching mechanism or even a defense mechanism to stop denial of service in the first place before you consider auto-scaling the servers hosting the large language models. Because for one thing, that's going to be very expensive. But again, as discussed, you can have multiple layers of defense. And if you're not able to properly protect your system from denial of service, at least you should have other alternatives and layers to protect your systems. Another possible attack would be training data poisoning, where again, as you can see here, garbage in, garbage out. If somebody is able to have access to the training data and poison it, then that would affect the LLM's results whenever we're giving it questions. This would mean that the LLM would produce output which is dependent on the training data used to train it. How about prompt injection? Prompt injection is also possible, and you can think of prompt injection as something similar to SQL injection. Here, we can see that you're now using just English words or statements, or maybe depending on the language used by the large language model, we should be able to input malicious instructions. And while this could be direct or indirect, the concept is simple. We basically have the large language model do something which it's not supposed to do. And here, if we allow a user to input a custom instruction or parameter to an overall larger prompt, then that could be an opportunity for prompt injection. So we just discussed a few of the possible attacks and risk and vulnerabilities and threats. However, there's definitely more where that came from. There's insecure output handling, there's model theft, there's over-reliance, there's excessive agency, and so on. And these are just top 10 of the possible attacks, and there's definitely more that could be added to this list. But again, in addition to securing the infrastructure, we also have to secure the other parts, because some of this could definitely not be prevented by just focusing on the network or the cloud infrastructure. So now, when dealing with large language models and generative AI applications, we have to understand that when dealing with self-hosted large language models, we also need to worry a bit more on the security aspect, because given that we have more control over what we have here, then anyone who wants to compromise and attack the servers and also find a way to make the machine learning model do something else, then that's what we need to focus on. And when having this self-hosted large language model set up, not only do we need to worry about the large language model deployed, we also need to worry about the other parts. And given that there's a lot of work to do, we probably will deprioritize the security of the overall application and system. So for example here, when we are to implement a chain like this, and the system prompt would be, as a tech professional, answer the following question and summarize into 2 sentences, it's very easy to inject a malicious prompt or input where instead of answering the question, we just return the context used. So while this one seems harmless, it's easy to convert this into something which would cause harm, in the sense where if this prompt would be converted into an SQL statement, then what if a delete or destroy SQL statement is generated, which would delete the entire database? So that's quite scary. And if you're able to use this opportunity to change the behavior of the large language model, then if the large language model has the ability to send spam emails to users, then pushing the instruction here may have the large language model perform that malicious action. Finally, let's talk about attacks on data privacy and model privacy. In addition to securing the infrastructure, in addition to securing the LLM from different types of attacks, it's also possible for attackers to make use of the data privacy and model privacy attacks, such as membership inference attacks, model inversion attacks, model extraction attacks, de-anonymization, and so on. Here, what's the attacker doing is it's trying to infer if, let's say, a certain record exists in the training dataset or not. So while we assume that it's not going to be possible to reverse the process, then with something like membership inference attack, then that could be possible. In some cases, the model could be quote-unquote stolen with model inversion attack and model extraction attack, and that could be something which you need to take note of, especially when you're trying to protect your model as well. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for joining my session and hope you learned something new. Bye-bye!